CNN did a really interesting focus group with undecided Pennsylvania voters and had them react right after Vice President Kamala Harris's nomination speech at the Democratic National Convention that went very, very well. And as we dive into this, obviously it is, I know, and some people want to mock because of this, I understand, it is truly hard to fathom being undecided in this political moment. And so how much should we really put in terms of weight on these responses? But these are the sorts of decisions that sway the election. And so I do think it's interesting to hear from these individuals. And one thing that was for sure in the wake of Harris's speech is that at least this Pennsylvania undecided voters focus group, among these individuals, a bunch of them were swayed in the direction of Vice President Kamala Harris because of her remarks. I'll then go on to show you a few different things that are shaping up to be Trump's nightmare. But first, here's this.
About that. Right. But what I want to ask all of you all together at this point, like I said, none of you were ready to make a commitment to any candidate in November. Please raise your hand right now if you're now ready to make a commitment after today. Wow. I'm just kind of surprised by it. We haven't rehearsed this. I'm going to make that very clear. They will attest to this. 7 of you are now ready. Scott?
Yes, I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris.
Andy?
Yeah, Kamala Harris, yes.
Donna?
Yes, I'm voting for her also.
Sean? Sean?
Yes, Kamala.
Sabrina?
Kamala.
Patrick?
Kamala.
Brian?
Trump.
Trump. And finally, Lindsay.
Still probably not voting.
So probably you don't like either of them.
How do I get my head around that? I don't know. What? Ooh.
And finally, Lindsay.
Still probably not voting.
So probably you don't like either of them.
Nope.
Okay.
What led to you all making a decision? Was it that decisive of an evening, Scott?
Yeah, I really, as I said before, I really liked her confidence. She's really seemed presidential. She seemed very confident. Like I said, she spoke from her heart. I liked how she filled you in on her background, that she struggled, her mother struggled,
all right.
Middle class.
Yeah. I agree. She was very confident. I agree. It was great hearing her backstory. I just don't know how we waited this long to come to that. But okay, good. I'm excited for these individuals. Hoorah! Exciting. And in terms of the reasoning that we got, you heard from one guy there, then this gentleman's response was also really good.
Gave it again?
I gave her an A.
How come?
I was looking for policy information. I really wanted to see some substantive policy information. And I thought she did give enough. I like what she gave on military, what she wants to do for our veterans, and with border control. I just think that she has a lot of good ideas, and she's very well spoken. I think she was very professional.
Yeah, and so I think also the most compassionate way to analyze this is a lot of people, I've told you this before, but a lot of people don't know that their values align, at least their core values, with the Democratic candidate because of this thick and deep branding that's been done by the Republican Party. That is to say, if you're patriotic, you're Republican. If you're pro-American, you're Republican. If you're pro-veteran, you're Republican. If you're pro-smart economic decisions, you're Republican. And so many of these things contradict their actual record, but it works. If you think every single gun shouldn't be taken away, or unless you're for banning every single gun, then you're Republican. These things that aren't actually aligned with reality, but really impact people. And so then if you have someone tune into Vice President Kamala Harris's speech, as we're seeing with this focus group, and I think this is represented across a lot of people who listen with an open mind, you'll hear them go, oh, wait, she's for helping veterans. And if they were to dive into the record of the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, Democrats are far more willing to invest in that. But, oh, She is for common sense gun reform, but not banning all guns altogether, as sometimes Republicans try to allege. She loves her country. She is for going out there and working hard as an individual, while also supporting governmental programs that uplift Americans, etc. And then it becomes a whole different analysis for them. And so I think a really encouraging part of seeing a lot of people's reactions to this speech and others is that often it's not our job to change people's priorities, to change people's values altogether, but instead just to show them that the reasons they think their values align with the Republican Party, especially now that Trump represents the Republican Party, it's not actually true. And that's something I thought was so compelling. I'll be bringing him up a lot today. Was so compelling about former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger's remarks, because he said, the reason I'm standing here is because I learned that the Democratic Party in this political moment is the party of patriots. The Democratic Party is the party that loves their country, their constitution, their democracy. And right now, because of Trump, the Republican Party does not represent that. And so while Adam Kinzinger has been a lifelong Republican, he feels obligated to advocate for the Democratic candidate. And that took a lot of courage, which is why it really is sticking with me. But that's an exciting part about the reaction here. It just took listening to her speech for almost every person on this focus group to go, oh, I'm voting for her. Which means our job is actually easier than sometimes it feels. It's just informing people. Here's the policies. I loved about her speech, one of the guys mentioned that it was policy heavy. Thick with policy, a lot of just specific things she wants to do in a presidential term, as opposed to Trump's RNC speech that was so directed towards fear-mongering and his normal rants, his normal rambles, and wasn't talking in a very pragmatic sense about how he would get things done for the American people. Another thing that's going to drive Trump absolutely bonkers is that the DNC has had better ratings than the RNC.
The sort of level of performance at this convention as a whole, Wolf, I also think is a pretty significant storyline here. I mean, with Jamie's reporting about Oprah Winfrey, I have to say, watching the roll call last night, it was a pretty stark, frankly, contrast with how they did it at the Republican National Convention. It felt like they were having a big party here, and that seems likely to continue tonight. And I think my question is, how much does that break through in ways that aren't traditional? Because that's something I think the Democrats are really trying to do.
I'll tell you, one of the ways it breaks through is the ratings. And they just came in for the second night of the convention.
The TV ratings.
Yeah. More than 20 million people watched. And by comparison, 14 million plus watched the Republican convention on the second night. So people are watching this convention, even though it's going late. Barack Obama didn't come on until after 11 o'clock in the East. But you talk about the performances at this convention. One of the...
Yeah. It has been consistent, and we don't yet have numbers, or I don't, at least on night 4. But I can confidently say that we're going to see a similar phenomenon where more Americans are tuning into the DNC than they did to the RNC. And even separate from the celebrities that have shown up that maybe are making an impact, people being more interested in hearing from the Obamas on one of the nights than Matt Gaetz' speech at the RNC, right? And a much more excited feeling. The ratings are matching what you're actually getting. Okay, so you choosing to tune in might be because you've heard exciting things, but then when you tune in, if you were to watch Trump's RNC speech, you're getting nothing. I mean, the beginning was a little bit different, right? Him reflecting on the horrible assassination attempt and all that. But everything after that was just his normal stuff that everyone's tired of. And you contrast that against a DNC that is so different than anything you've been getting in Democratic politics for some time, that is so thrilling, so unifying, and sort of fun. and emotional at times. And so people are likely sticking around for that as well. One thing I loved was sheriffs. I saw at least two spoke. This was Michigan Sheriff Chris Swanson, and I'll play this for you. I also saw a Texas sheriff talking about how the Democratic Party is the party that actually wants to do something relating to the border. And here you have this Michigan sheriff saying this about crime.
If I was in a courtroom, she's exactly the tough prosecutor that I'd want to see. As vice president, she served America by keeping us safer. And I can testify firsthand, where I come from, crime is down and police funding is up.
Yeah. Even that, right? The Republican Party desperately tried to frame themselves for so long as the party that values law enforcement. And while they're still trying, it doesn't really come off convincingly, because all Trump means by that is his only policy stance that reflects that is we should give full criminal immunity to police officers, meaning they couldn't be held legally accountable if they broke the law while they were doing their job. And that's law and order? No. Law and order applies to police officers too. We can properly invest in law enforcement and hold individuals responsible and accountable if they act in harmful ways in their job like any other job, especially given the consequences, the magnitude of harm that can be done in that particular position, the responsibility that comes with it. But then you can't really pretend like you're the pro law enforcement party when your candidate is actively saying he wants to pardon those who violently attacked police officers on January 6th and calls them heroes and patriots. And so on top of that, as was pointed out by that sheriff, the largest federal investment in public safety and law enforcement has been made under the Biden-Harris administration, showing that you can be for reforms, you can be for accountability, making sure communities are policed in a safe and equal way, while also properly funding and investing in law enforcement. And that's what's been happening. And we've been seeing a plummet in crime like we talk about often. Adam Kinzinger, as I told you, spoke, and I want to show some of his remarks.
And tonight, as a Republican speaking before you, I'm putting our country first. Because the fact is, I do belong here. I know Kamala Harris shares my allegiance to the rule of law, the Constitution, and democracy. And she is dedicated to upholding all three in service to our country. Whatever policies we disagree on pale in comparison with those fundamental matters of principle, of decency, and of fidelity to this nation.
This is what politics should be. Because I can tell you, if Adam Kinzinger and I sat down and wrote out a list of the biggest issues, aside from the foundational ones he just mentioned, the biggest issues that Americans debate on, we would have a ton of differences on all of those. We could do a long, long debate. But that is democracy. That's what's beautiful about living in a democracy, is you have the freedom and ability to debate that and then see who can convince more people to go out and vote for one or the other, or the other, or the other, or the other. But the reason why the reason why it can be so stable and beautiful is because ideally you all agree on the basics, the foundational stuff. And then on top of that, go crazy. But the foundation has to be something you're all dedicated to, which is, as I've probably now said hundreds and hundreds of times on the show, a dedication to our Constitution and democratic process. Because without that, you don't have, none of the other policy debates matter at all, because those all happen within a democratic framework. And that's what MAGA and Trump, with his denial of free and fair election results, with his attempts to block the the peaceful transfer of power based on those election results, and with the attacks on the rule of law that he's levied, Trump and MAGA have given up on those basic things. And so every time you hear someone like Adam Kinzinger speak, who was a Republican in Congress, battling us on issues, it reminds us of what politics should be, which is us debating with someone like Adam Kinzinger, instead of what it currently is, which is debating with people who disagree on fundamental, foundational issues. And that's what's so dreadful about this current moment, but what's so hopeful about a future one where it is Adam Kinzinger versus us, right, in the debate, a much more healthy one. Let me know what you thought of all that in the comments. If you want to get extra content daily and support the work this show does, you can do that by clicking the join button below.